All right, everyone. Some people are asking sort of what's the libertarian position on how we rein in the big tech firms? At this point, it's clear that they have to be reined in. They've become a trust. They are abusing users. They're not even really abiding by their own TOS in some cases in so doing. Something has to be done. The liberals, oddly enough, are arguing for a corporatized internet in which these big tech firms remain monopolies. They have no problem with that. They should be able to kick people off if they want, because so far the people they've kicked off have been largely tilted to the right. They're part of like the alt media and stuff. Now that'll change. People who are progressives are next, because the people pulling the strings behind the scenes don't want anybody to independently talk about political things. Not a progressive, not an alt-righter, not a libertarian, no. They don't want any of you to talk about it. They'll kick Progressive Voice off, they'll kick Lionel off, they'll kick Kolinsky off, they'll kick you all off. If you don't have a corporate partnership and you're not controlled opposition, you'll be kicked off if groups like the New York Times and the SPLC get their way. They don't care if you're saying the same things they want you to say, because you're not sucking at the corporate teat. So they can't guarantee you'll keep saying the right things. You might go rogue, you might say something independent, have an independent thought. They can't have that, that's why they're targeting people. I thought about it. Why don't we just have an Internet Bill of Rights? You know, something that basically delineates if you are a U.S. firm, if you're based in the United States, which all of these big tech firms are. And I don't mean, well, your mailbox is here. No, I mean physically, you are predominantly a U.S. firm. You're paying U.S. taxes sometimes. I mean, maybe paying a 0.1% rate, but you're subject to them, loopholes or not. If you're going to do that, you will be bound by certain rules, certain understandings with regards to your user base. You have certain responsibilities because you are engaged with the flow of 90% of the world's communication structure. I think this is perfectly acceptable. You don't need direct government regulation. You simply need a Bill of Rights, delineating, yes, people on your platforms. If your platform is hegemonic and monopolistic, you will respect people who have political views that you yourself may totally hate. There are only a few limitations properly understood on speech, and they never have to do with the speech itself. They always have to do with the effect. For instance, incitement or credible threat. You are violating another person's rights. You are potentially causing a situation in which they lose their life, or their limb, or their happiness. Their property is damaged. Defamation, it's the same thing. Fundamentally, it boils down in many cases to property and to the economy. Because if someone has been defamed, if they've been labeled like, this person's a sexual predator, or an arsonist, or a kleptomaniac or something, that can damage their ability to find a job, it can damage their ability to maintain relationships, it can damage their ability to brand themselves. If someone's self-branded, it's especially prevalent. It's like the legacy media defames people all the time. They get away with it because, unfortunately, defamation laws aren't quite strong enough. I think we need to potentially change that. If you're, for instance, copyright infringement, that's a violation of property rights. Yeah, you may be just speaking, like, hey, I'm going to do an audiobook. Well, it's speech. It's protected by the First Amendment. I have the right to read out this book. No, because there's a competing audiobook that the author themselves is voicing, they're making money off of. And because it's their intellectual property, they have that right. How is it that our government can say, well, we're going to extend patents and copyrights forever and bend over backwards and suck off every corporation and protect their intellectual property, protect them from being defamed by one another, protect you in many cases from, suing them even if they mistreat you, but private individuals who now form the backbone of much of the world's economy, because they are the consumers, basically fuck them. I think that the internet is too important as a means of communication. It's too intrinsic at this point to allow these big tech firms to kick people off for just a whim. For minor things, the person was offensive, the person said fuck or something, no, they shouldn't be banned from these sites, insofar as they have a certain market share. They should be bound by an Internet Bill of Rights, and the normal judicial process should be employed. Not congressional oversight, not the FEC gets involved, no. The regular court system should get involved if there are violations. Person's been kicked off. Alex Jones gets kicked off for being hateful in a generic sense. Shouldn't be happening. He gets kicked off because he's being sued even though the lawsuit hasn't culminated in a decision yet. Unacceptable. Shouldn't be happening. Just because somebody else claims that they're offended at your content doesn't mean that that content should be considered wrong on any platform. These platforms are largely meant for adults anyway. YouTube's 13+. Twitter's 18+. What's the problem? An adult can't see a bad joke once in a while? No, of course they can. It's called block the other person. These sites have a mechanism already to deal with these things. It's like a couple years ago we said, hey, fucking Snowflake, just block them and then go off. If they keep, doing it over and over, making sock accounts or whatever, that's harassment. Until they do that, though, who fucking cares? You're offended by their content. Don't watch it then, idiot. We desperately need an internet bill of rights or something comparable to make sure that these big tech firms continue functioning in a healthy manner. Like, if these tech firms were to collapse and leave a gaping hole in the U.S. economy, you do realize, for all the Republicans out there, the never-Trumpers, you still care about fiscal issues. What do you think would happen? How many people would be unemployed if these tech firms all went under because they start abusing their user base and they leave behind a vacuum that takes several years for alt tech to fill? That'll be a little bit difficult. Now, investors would love it because they'll be like, oh, I'm going to invest in BitChute or Gab or something. They'd love it. They'd make money hand over fist. All the old investors get screwed. And a bunch of users get screwed. And a bunch of people are out of their jobs for a very long time. I don't think you'd like it, especially now that the Republicans hold the White House and the House and the Senate. No, something needs to be done, and it needs to be done desperately. And all these, like, change.org petitions and stuff, stop circulating them. Don't bother posting change.org petitions on my page for any reason. They don't do anything. No, lobby the White House. Post the link to a petition that you've got on White House. It's on whitehouse.gov. The ones that you get 100,000 or a million or whatever signatures, they're answered potentially by Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Get one of those going so we can have a national conversation. That one I would support. I'm not going to... Change.org doesn't mean anything at this point, except to apply topical pressure on certain issues like, hey, state of whatever, declare that this business is being wrong for being discriminatory. And then, a bunch of people who aren't even from there sign the petition. It gets talked about by the legacy media and the alt media, and then it becomes a national conversation. We've already got a national conversation on the censorship issue. It's been raging now for over a year. So a change.org petition means absolutely nothing. I'm not going to sign it. It's not going to do anything. We need an internet bill of rights to protect content creators. People who have spent in some cases years or decades on platforms building content should not be randomly screwed because other groups of people, usually organized by NGOs and corporate media, happen to dislike them. This is happening because groups like CNN and the New York Times are dying off, they're branching out online, and they're trying to knock some of their competitors out of the way to make it easier. That's ultimately what this boils down to. They're attempting to sanitize various big tech platforms to cater to you very sanitized, controlled corporate material in partnership with groups that already have large sums of money and are partnering with them. It's a commercial move. It's not related to politics. Once the progressives start getting kicked off, after they've gotten rid of all the right-wingers, they'll go in on the progressives next. And then you'll see that I'm right. It'll take a few years. They'll begin doing that. Over the next few years, expect a lot of your major content creators on these platforms to be kicked off of them. Mostly on, pardon the pun, trumped up charges. Oh, they're hateful. Well, why am I hateful? They're never going to tell you. It's just, hey, we're at will. Yeah, we're cutting you loose. Bye. Fuck you after 10 years of making videos or years and years of tweeting and having 1 million people follow you. Fuck you. Get off the platform. We don't like you anymore because the New York Times says you're a bad person. That's what do you think the legacy media is doing to Twitter right now? Jack Dorsey, of all people, the one person who won't ban Alex Jones, they are browbeating him and have been for 48 hours. They're also attacking Google and Apple for maintaining their presence on their app stores, even if they've kicked them off the most readily, easily searchable stuff. They're still technically there, like they've got their own independent apps. Like the InfoWars app apparently is #1 on the Google store right now. They're trying to get them kicked off. They're saying, well, how can you leave them on there? This is terrible. It's a horrible thing. By the way, it is true that Gab and BitChute and other sites need apps. Absolutely. I don't use a smartphone, so I don't really give a fuck. But mobile version for things, yeah, it's necessary. A lot of people think smartphones are computers. They're not. They're just fucking phones. They're meant to make phone calls and texts. I don't know why anyone uses the internet on a little tiny screen that's going to fry their eyeballs and give them fucking glaucoma by the age of 35. I choose not to do that. I'll stick with a laptop, a really, really powerful one for what I do. But okay, if you want to be constantly on the internet everywhere you go being listened into by Crapple or Microshaft or something, go a fucking head. Because that's exactly why they've addicted to you to that bullshit. No, when I'm outside, I don't want to be on the internet. I want to be in nature. That's about all. Peace out.